Now welcome to another edition of News from Naboo with Thor's Lightning Takes. And let's get right to the news.
Alright, so today we're going to talk about a couple of things. We're going to start by talking about an interview we saw on Entertainment Weekly's YouTube page. I'll have a link to it in the description below, so you have the option now of watching the interview yourself. It was kind of Favreau and Filoni sitting down. They talked a little about their creative process. They talked about lore building. They talked about how they feel building within the Star Wars universe, their toy box, as Filoni put it.
I always call it a sandbox, not a toy box, but...
Well, he called it a toy box.
Because you can build more with the, sand sculptures and tear it down, which sometimes they do.
You can tear apart toys, too.
But no, I love watching these two guys talk, and I would recommend going and watching the video. It's good. It's like a few minutes. And
5 minutes or something.
I just love watching them talk because you can feel the enthusiasm. I've always said that. From the first time they were on stage together at Star Wars Celebration, like 3-4 years ago, whatever that was before the first season of The Mandalorian, there's just an energy that they have together, which is infectious. It gets you excited for what they're talking about, and you can tell they're actually excited and they know what they're talking about.
Favreau says, I find a really interesting quote. He's talking about how there are so many characters in Star Wars, so many time periods that we're often making charts of how things would intersect and how things would impact one another. But at the end of the day, it just comes down to storytelling, us pitching each other ideas. We're both writers, so we both go off and write our own. Then we contribute a scene or punch up with each other. But really, it's about getting the ideas going.
I just wish those charts would include the books and comics sometimes.
Yeah.
Look, I understand the precedence that the films and the shows are going to take. I get that. And we talked about this a little bit in regards to Tales of the Jedi yesterday in those videos. And no spoilers for it, per se. But I do wish that the books and comics could be incorporated a little bit better or treated with a bit more respect sometimes.
Yeah, anytime you do get excited and you see, oh, that's from this book or something, they turn around and they're like, maybe it's not.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I
like... At best, they just don't mess with the book. At worst, they totally retcon it.
Yeah, I like the continuity in what I would imagine going forward is going to be with all these, shows in the Mandalorian era, the post-Return of the Jedi era. I like how they're setting things up. And it's a blank slate, more or less, right? In terms of the new canon. Don't get me going on the EU. But in the new canon, there's very little to kind of interfere with as long as you're working in that. It's just when we're going back to the Clone Wars and original trilogy era or prequel era, there's so much stuff there that it's sometimes they do kind of overlap or rewrite things, which gets frustrating.
Yeah, there was also a segment where Favreau was talking about how when he was working on Spider-Man, he talked with John Watts, who was directing, about the upcoming idea they were kind of pitching around for Skeleton Crew. Turned out John Watts was like, hey, I kind of have an idea for that. He told Favreau. Favreau got on the horn with Filoni. They got in a Zoom meeting, the three of them together, and they're like, yeah, this needs to happen this way. They liked what he had going on, and that's how that came to be, which is interesting.
It's interesting because I didn't hear, Kathleen Kennedy in on that Zoom call or anything. It really makes me wonder how much creative freedom and control Filoni and Favreau have over what they're doing. I would imagine almost a blank check to do what they want at this point. The Mandalorian was such a huge success. You can give some credit to Kennedy. I'm not saying she didn't greenlight it or have any influence. I'm not trying to say she does nothing. I'm not here to just hate on her, right? But let's be real. The Mandalorian is the result of Favreau and Filoni doing what they do, and
doing what they love.
Disney above, the overlords at Disney have to know that they created by far the most beloved thing that Star Wars has done so far. And so I do believe those two kind of get to do what they want to do, independent of what Kennedy might say.
Yeah, they went on to talk about how they love how it's got an Amblin feel. And they talked about how the Star Wars is branching out into new genre. They talked about how Andor is intrigue, adventure, that's
the Mandalorian adventure.
They mentioned Ahsoka being a samurai-esque adventure.
Yeah.
I'm like, interesting.
Very
or a
interesting.
samurai journey or something.
Yeah.
So that gives us a little peek as to what Ahsoka might be kind of
little
tonally.
Hint, yeah.
We'll see. And then they talk about the filmings. And we have Ahsoka filming several episodes at once with different directors. Skeleton Crew is filming at the same time with several stages. Mando editing is going on. Writing of the next season is going on. There are so many different creative nodes, as he puts it, sharing space with one another. Like, they have just one lot where there's like 5 or 4 different Star Wars projects all filming at the same time or writing, which is really cool. It tells you that it's a really easy way for them to do cameos, too, if they're going to. I'm like, hey, you got this person on your lot right now? I want to borrow him for 5 minutes.
But no, that sounds great. I just wish it incorporated everything. Like I said, I still feel like there are different departments, unfortunately, which it's going to be the case, right? You can't have Favreau and Filoni literally overseeing everything. I'm not saying they, why can't they do more? No, I'm sure they do plenty, and I mean, they do plenty. So, but at the same time, I wish their kind of intricate charts and stuff could branch out and include, just give some hints and nods to the comics. Be like, okay, can you, if you're going to do a story, can you incorporate this or not incorporate that? Can we try to just weave it in a little bit better? Because there are a lot of people who love to read, right? A lot of people who love to read comic books.
Or even listen to the audiobooks.
I mean, one of the reasons I love to read today is because of Star Wars books, right? Those are one of the first things I really read for myself because I wanted to read, not because I'm in school and I got told I had to read a book. Mm-hmm. And so it's frustrating to read Star Wars books for 30 years, and now we have a point where they just kind of, there's this new canon and there was this idea that they could all be incorporated, and they just kind of get pushed to the side whenever.
Like I was saying with cameo possibilities, I really do hope that they incorporate some of the Skeleton Crew aspects, or maybe, Jude Law, if he's a pirate or something. We've made plenty of speculation about what he could be. I said a
droid, but it doesn't seem that's going to be right.
No.
Yeah.
It'd be cool to see them crop up in, like, The Mandalorian first. It's very intelligent if they do it something that way.
Well, yeah, the little threads, little crumbs that lead elsewhere. I mean, that's what Kennedy has even said, for whatever that's worth. Kennedy has said they want to do the persistent storytelling.
Well, it makes sense. People who didn't watch the animated Clone Wars don't know who Ahsoka is, but she was in Mandalorian.
Yeah.
With plenty of intrigue, mystery, coolness, and in Book of Boba Fett. Now she's getting her own show. People know her from The Mandalorian and maybe think she's pretty interesting. Same can now be said if they incorporate a little bit from Skeleton Crew to kind of give you like a prelude to go, okay, I'm a little to be like, I know who this character is, and now I'm intrigued as to where he's going to go, so I can watch the new Skeleton Crew, or some such.
Well, they did talk about, Favreau and Filoni talked about creating new characters, which I think is just hugely important. They really need to make some new characters instead of kind of relying on the backbone legacy characters all the time, and then getting people frustrated when they, make some interesting choices with them. Which isn't to say I don't want to see legacy characters. I think the best way to handle legacy characters might be what Tales of the Jedi has done. And again, no spoilers for that if you haven't seen it, but take these characters and let's do some, interesting shorts. Let's give little clips and snippets of their life, if that's what you want, little interesting stories or tales. Let's have like an anthology style series again. Let's take Tales of the Jedi and do more with it, I guess I'm saying.
Well, I think Tales of the Jedi, I did see a lot of mixed reviews on, not the show itself, so the show and the characters and everything, wonderful, but about the length.
Yeah, that's...
Shorts are great, but they leave out so much information. Like, oh, look, we got this really cool action sequence, and we see there's an underlying message behind it, but that's all it is.
Yeah.
I think that if they're going to move forward with any sort of Tales of the Jedi anthology-type storytelling, give us back the half-hour program.
Yeah, I would say make 30 to 40-minute, like, one-off episodes. Or longer, or a little shorter, depending on what it calls for.
And maybe even spread it out a little. I mean, if they're focusing during Clone Wars-y type characters, let's maybe not just make it Tales of the Jedi. I would love to see some...
Tales of the Galaxy?
Well, I'd like to see some backstory on Palpatine. Maybe some with him being corrupted and brought to the dark side himself. Or possibly just some of the stuff he's been does in the background to make everything happen.
Well, yeah, that could still be incorporated into... I mean, he's a Sith. That's, I know he's not a Jedi. Obviously, Tales of the Jedi doesn't make complete sense, but considering who he is and his importance, or, what he does to the Jedi, you could still have a Tales of the Jedi about
other characters, like, what about some young Mace Windu stories? More about his past. Maybe a little story about his purple lightsaber.
Well, that's the thing. There are so... as I talk about making new characters, there are so many characters already created that there's infinite stories to be told in Star Wars, right? So it's not that I don't want to see legacy characters used. It's just when you make them the premise of an entire show and you feel like this importance to make something huge out of them, right? Because, well, we have to tell a whole series. We got 6 episodes. When you do a half-hour show, it can be a little bit less intense and a little less important, yet maybe a key moment in their life nonetheless.
Right. I just want to know the story of Pong Krell. Why did he turn clone against clone, brother against brother?
I would love to see Pong. That was one of the best arcs. The Umbara arc in the Clone Wars is one of the best in the entire series.
So let's get some backstory and an 30-minute episode on him to understand maybe some of his motivations.
Yeah,
I want to know the whys behind some of these things, and this is a series that could easily handle that. Maybe you don't have to exactly even write yourself and say, okay, it has to be 30 minutes, but give enough time to tell a full story.
That's what I'm saying. It could be 20 minutes. It could be an hour. Just let it be what it needs to be.
Yeah, because some of those Dooku episodes could have been longer for my taste.
Not to get into it, but yeah, I thought the Dooku episodes were more interesting than the Ahsoka ones, just because Ahsoka's story feels like very fleshed out, whereas Dooku, especially if you're not, you never get into the EU or even the new sources of canon which have delved into Dooku, he's a very kind of mysterious character, right?
Right. I would like to see what exactly happened to the character of Sifo Dyas.
Yeah.
We know him from the book. What
Jedi
happened
Lost
to him.
Is great for Sifo Dyas and Dooku, of course. So
right. Some of the characters maybe even that were fleshed out more in the books that weren't in anything. Why not give them more information, more backstory on Qui-Gon and his early life? I would just like to see some more stories, more tales of the Republic, let's call it.
Well, you could have multiple. I mean, you could do like 6-episode seasons, and you could name the season what Tales of the Sith, Tales of the Republic, as you say, Tales of the Outer Rim, whatever you want to do. Tales of the Underworld. There's so many potential, and the animation. Maybe do.
I mean, they say Star Wars is about Filoni and Favreau say Star Wars is about character.
Yeah.
About these characters. Well, give me more on these characters. I want even somebody who's making a bad decision, like Pong Krell, who's doing something horrible, why is he doing it? Give me a reason rather than, well, he's going to be the bad guy now.
Yeah, it works in the episode, don't get me wrong. It's not like the episodes are lacking because we don't know his motivation per se, but I certainly get what you're saying. I'd love to know that motivation. Right.
They're giving us some of that motivation with Dooku through Tales of the Jedi, though I'm not going to give any spoilers per se. Give me some more motivation for the other characters in the stories.
The Dooku is a perfect example because you mesh all those episodes together. It's maybe 35, 40 minutes, and yet it really gives you the story of what went wrong with Dooku, why he turned.
I also want to know the story of those twin girl Jedi. I mean, if you're not...
Tiplar and Tiplee?
Yes. I'm surprised that the Order lets them work together. I mean, if they're not supposed to have attachments, you'd think that they'd want to keep them as separate as possible. They're going to have a natural bond through the Force, and if Jedi aren't supposed to have these attachments, you've got a set of twins that you're letting work side by side.
Yeah, it could be that they're so attached in the Force that to separate them would be more detrimental than
But we don't know that because we didn't get any shorts.
Well, we'll pitch it to Lucasfilm. We'll get them on the phone. I'm sure they'd love to listen to Thor Skywalker talk Star Wars.
I'll just email Dave Filoni. It's my direct line.
Yeah.
But no, that's what I'm thinking. I would love to see more of this form of storytelling, examining more characters, broaden our scope.
Yeah. No, I agree entirely. I hope that Tales of the Jedi was a test run, kind of a benchmark to see the interest and how this would work, what people would say.
Tales of the Clones.
There you go. Hell, I would love that series. I kind of hope Bad Batch would be more anthology, that we deal with more clones than just a Bad Batch, which isn't to say I don't like the Bad Batch or it isn't good for what it is.
It's called the Bad Batch. I mean, what did you expect?
Well, no, I mean, yes, you're right. But my point is I wouldn't mind seeing more clones. I mean, there's so many things I would love to see more of in Star Wars. Mm-hmm. It's just, there's obviously limited, and you don't want content just for the sake of content. Don't get me wrong either. That's one of my biggest complaints. But there is room for a ton of stories, infinite stories in a galaxy, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's all we got for you this time. So take to the comments below. Tell us if you've watched this interview with Filoni and Favreau. Tell us what you thought of it or what you think of what we thought of it. And would you like to see a sort of anthology-style series that bounces around the galaxy, covers different characters, covers little snippets of these legacy characters' lives that maybe aren't gigantic but are important nonetheless? Whatever the case may be, leave your comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.